I'm Brandi. Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, we start with an exclusive report. Caught on tape, an Olympia School District teacher going on an unhinged political rant.
How this law is generally applied is by white supremacists who say they were scared just by the presence of a black or brown person.
Plus, former Seattle City Councilwoman Kshama Sawant weighs in on Congressman Jamaal Bowman losing his congressional seat. And finally got it, proof of paid protesters. That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support the show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. I'm Brandi Kruse. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for giving us your commitment to give common sense a comeback. We start with an exclusive report today on the education front. We talk a lot about some of the social and political agendas being pushed on kids in schools. We have particularly done a lot of stories out of the Olympia, Washington School District. That seems to be ground zero for some of this stuff. And there really doesn't seem to be a lot of consequences for teachers who engage in clearly unacceptable behavior by pushing their personal agendas on young kids. I mean, we have done some really astounding stories, but what's unique about the story today is that it is captured on tape. So what happened in this sixth grade science classroom in the Olympia School District was so unhinged, so off topic, that a sixth grade girl decided that she was going to secretly record it so that she could be sure that her parents could hear exactly what happened. Now, I'm going to give you a little context, but then we're just going to play the full tape for you, because to truly understand how crazy it is, you just have to hear it for yourself. So this was supposed to be, as I said, a science lesson. It was supposed to be a lesson on bugs. All the kids were going to be creating a square depicting an insect for a quilt. Okay, that sounds fine. That sounds appropriate for sixth graders in a science class to do a project like that. But then the teacher invited in a fellow teacher to give an unplanned, unapproved presentation that turned into a presentation about quilts that were made in the name of social justice. So this young girl student ends up, you're going to hear the recording pick up right after this teacher, Karina Champion, starts to talk about former President Ronald Reagan.
Because this disease was primarily affecting gay people and he was homophobic, he chose to stop any funding to go towards trying to solve this disease. And people were dying in huge, huge numbers because of his homophobia. Now we have medicines that we can take that prevent you from even getting HIV. We have medicines that help you care for your body if you do get HIV, to the point where now the virus isn't even able to be found in your blood because it's at such a low level that you can't even infect other people with it. So because people organized around this issue, and now this quilt has 50,000 panels of people who were killed by this virus, and it gets taken and displayed all over the world now. Not only has our government changed its policies and made it so that scientists could get money to study this disease and stop it from spreading, but it's happened in other countries all around the world. So this is a more recent one. Does anybody know who Trayvon Martin is? No? Okay. So Trayvon Martin was a kid who was a little bit older than you. He was 13 years old. He went to go walk to the corner store and got some Skittles and an iced tea for his brother. And on his way home, a white supremacist was following him in his truck and yelling at him, and then got out and killed him. And the person who killed him did not go to jail, was not charged because of a racist law that's currently in Florida that allows people to kill someone else if they are scared. And how this law is generally applied is by white supremacists who say they were scared just by the presence of a black or brown person. Just because they're different. So this quilt was made in protest of that event. And the reason it says rest in power Trayvon Martin is that because of the lack of judicial support in this event, people organized to create what is now the Black Lives Matter movement to try and get laws changed so that people who are black and brown have the same protections as people who are white, which is what our country is supposed to stand for, is justice for all. So our issue obviously is not as profound and intense of an issue as some of these, but it's still something that's really important to the 7th and 8th graders, and it's going to be a big project that you have the opportunity to work on as you are moving up to 7th grade. And so the 7th and 8th graders wanted to invite you to work on this with them, and what they are working on is educating people about the plants that we planted out in our food and medicine forests.
What? I've listened to that several times now, and I tell Nicole every time, this is the craziest thing we've talked about when it comes to public schools. These kids were in a science class and they were supposed to be learning about bugs. They were supposed to be learning about insects in science class. And as you heard there at the end of the tape, this teacher who came in, a 7th and 8th grade math and science teacher, she teaches both, who wanted to talk to them about what was supposed to be, again, a science-related project where the 7th and 8th graders are making a quilt that's going to depict different kinds of plants and also insects. And she was there to tell them, hey, the 7th and 8th graders would love you, since you're going to be in 7th grade next year, to help get started helping them with this quilt project about plants and bugs. And instead, what does she do? She shares with them a presentation about quilts, yes, but about social justice quilts, about how Ronald Reagan was a homophobe and so he let people die from HIV/AIDS. How Trayvon Martin was murdered by a white supremacist who was never even charged, which is, just factually wrong. She said Trayvon Martin was about your age, 13, talking to, 11, 12, 13-year-olds. I don't know what, trying to scare them and make them feel like if they're not white, somebody's just going to come up and kill them. Trayvon Martin was 17, not 13. She also says the white supremacist, George Zimmerman, who was Hispanic, was never arrested and never charged. No, that wasn't true. He went to trial for murder. He was acquitted. So not only is it completely inappropriate, unhinged, has nothing to do with the topic of science or insects, she's also spewing things to these kids that are just factually wrong. In one perusal, a quick perusal of her Facebook page, will come as no surprise to you. She's obviously pushing her own political and social beliefs on these kids. A couple of her pictures on Facebook, she's from going on her Facebook, it looks like she's in a same-sex relationship, which is totally fine, and she's supportive of, LGBTQ issues. That has nothing to do with a science lesson on bugs. She also has this profile picture graphic that says, a vote for Trump is a vote against my family. Again, fine, it's your personal Facebook. Have whatever political opinions that you want. She's got other pictures of Black Lives Matter movement and stuff. The problem is when your personal political opinions seep into the classroom, especially when we're talking about 6th grade students that aren't even your students. You were a guest in the classroom. You were supposed to be talking about a science project, and instead you're railing against homophobia, white supremacy, racism, and all of these things. And then we were doing a little research on this teacher because according to parents we've spoken to in the district, this teacher has a track record of pushing politics and social issues on kids. We'll get to more on that in a moment, but we came across this article in Thurston Talk where it just waxes poetic about how Karina Champion, this teacher, grew up and went through the Olympia Public School District. It says, Olympia helped grow a teacher. Now Karina Champion is helping grow the minds of local youth. God forbid. That is not the person I want growing the minds of local youth. It says, Karina Champion and her enthusiasm for teaching, for students' growth and quality instruction is a treasure for Olympia students and their families. Yeah, what I heard in that tape is not a treasure of a teacher. It's someone who has an agenda, doesn't care how young your kid is going to push that agenda on your kids. So anyway, mom of this sixth grader who took this tape has actually twins in that class, a boy and a girl, twin sixth graders. And she actually mostly homeschools her kids. Her name is Jake McCullough. She mostly homeschools her kids, but look, as your kids get older, there are some courses, science and math that you might just not feel comfortable teaching. And so she sends them for a couple classes to the Olympia School District and chooses specifically classes taught by teachers who they trust. Not teachers like Karina Champion, who just, unbeknownst to parents, shows up in this class and pushes her political and social issues on kids. So Jake McCullough was nice enough to join us and talk about what was taught in her kids' science class and what she tried to do after the fact to make sure that there was accountability. Jake, thank you for being here.
I appreciate you having me, Brandi.
I am stunned by this, and I don't get stunned easy. As a parent, we'll get into the details, but I have to imagine, is this the first time, by the way, you've ever spoken out about something that's happened in a classroom, in the news?
Absolutely.
So how are you feeling about doing that?
A little nervous.
Yeah, a little nervous.
A little nervous.
Well, this is exactly what we need. We say it on the show all the time. There's so many ridiculous things that happen, and I know parents feel that way, but they need to say something, and so I'm so glad you're willing to do this. So first, you have a sixth grade daughter?
I have a set of twins in that sixth grade class. So I have a boy-girl set of twins in that classroom.
Gotcha. And so this is through something called ORLA. Explain to me, it's public, it's part of the Olympia School District, but explain to people what that is.
So it's the Olympia Regional Learning Academy, which is shortened to ORLA. It's an extension of the district that houses their Montessori program. It houses what we call their H Connect, which would be what my students are in, where a homeschool family can opt in and take certain classes within the district still. And I believe it also houses their virtual online programs where students are taking the online Washington Academy.
Gotcha. So as we dive into this, have you as a parent had any problems up to this point with the Olympia School District, even ones that maybe you didn't voice concerns over?
I think if we had anything, I've gone either to my teacher or I've gone to a principal and addressed areas of concern. And we just have never had anything of this magnitude or had to deal with something like this.
Yeah, so let's dive into it. I gave a little bit of an introduction, but explain to folks what class this was and what the lesson was supposed to be about.
So we are a hybrid homeschool family, and this year we chose to take science at Orla. We wanted the twins to have an introduction to chemistry this year, and therefore we get to pick our classes and we also get to pick our teachers. And we had chosen a teacher that we were comfortable with and just wanted them to go through the science experience this year. It's not something I wanted to teach chemistry as far as this year. So in their classroom, they were supposed to be having a bug quilt was supposed to be the topic, where the students were supposed to be designing a square of a bug. And their teacher invited in a guest speaker, another teacher, to give a presentation. And that's how the event or when it occurred.
Gotcha. Bug square sounds pretty innocuous, sounds right in line with, what should be taught in that class. Were you as a parent or were students expecting there to be a guest presentation?
No, we were not informed there would be a guest speaker, and the students were told approximately 15 minutes prior.
Gotcha. And were they told what the presentation would be about 15 minutes prior?
No, they were not. They were never informed. They didn't know the teacher who was coming in. Parents weren't notified of a guest speaker. They didn't know the topic. They assumed it was on the bug quilt because that was what they were supposed to be working on.
Gotcha. So this guest teacher did in fact talk about quilts, but those quilts had nothing to do with bugs. So there's a recording of what happened. Take me through your understanding of what was said.
So my understanding and what I have heard, and the district has actually verified these statements to be accurate as well. So they have, they're not denying them. And the teacher presented a slideshow, and in the slideshow, there are 7 slides. I didn't get to see the slides until the day before I met with the district, even though I did request to review using 2081. I requested to review all curriculum. They withheld the slides from me. So I saw the slides 5 minutes before my meeting with the district. So I had heard audio, but I wasn't able to match those up visually with the slides. So there were 7 slides, and not a lot of verbiage at the bottom. So you're kind of just trying to figure out, they are all political. The title of the slideshow is History of Quilts for Awareness and Activism. That's the actual title of the slides. And as we move through, we get to a point in a slide that an AIDS quilt is shown. And this is when my daughter, right before this, she started to get extremely uncomfortable. And it referred to the teacher describing and referring to a president as homophobic, and that he reduced funding to AIDS and prolonged the disease due to his homophobia. Do you want me to continue?
Keep going. I just wanted to tell people it's Ronald Reagan.
Okay, so the next slide was a slide that said, "Rest in power, Trayvon Martin." The teacher proceeded to ask if the students knew who Trayvon Martin was, and my understanding is most of the kids had no response. She told them that he was close in their age, 13, not 17. She told him that he was followed home by a man after he went to get Skittles and ice cream for his brother, and a man followed him in a truck. A white supremacist man followed him and then killed him. She told that the man was not charged or tried in a court of law, and that people, white supremacist people, tend to apply this law in Florida to use fear and say they are scared to have a reason to kill brown and black people.
I don't even know where to go with that. So first, obviously your daughter felt, like you said, uncomfortable enough where she knew something wasn't right, and she's documenting this. And I'm assuming you heard the recording, and that's when you said, I've got to reach out to the school about this, right? Yeah. Correct.
We were doing wind down for the evening, actually, and just kind of everybody talks about their day. And the twins came to us and say, can we talk about something? And we're like, sure. And they said, well, something happened at school today. Can we talk about it? And then that's when we were aware there was a recording. So the very next day, then, yes, I was present at the school asking to speak with the principal.
Yeah. So you went, what was the reception like from the school when you said, hey, this is what happened, I want to talk about it?
At first, there was a little bit of, I would not give them a recording. And there was a little bit of disbelief in the sense of, I told them that there was one and that I had heard it. So I didn't want her to be accused of lies or embellishing, because that's I didn't want them to have that option to accuse her of that. And there was a lot of posturing, I guess is a word I can think of how are we going to say that, well, sometimes we teach history in science class and we are allowed to cross over topics and things like that. And so that's kind of how the conversation started.
And I think what's so horrible about that is you, as you alluded to earlier, as a part homeschool family, you chose this for science. You wanted them to be in a science class. And so then to have them in this class being taught about things that, no dispute, are not about science and are very political in nature is wild. Now, how did they justify not giving you the slides? Not letting you have, and you said you haven't, one of the pictures you haven't even seen, correct? That was shown on the slide?
I've seen the picture. They won't release the picture. I thought that one was that we should have a copy of the entire slideshow, but that one, the image of Trayvon Martin that was used in that slide, one, there's no sightings of sources that she used. I was told that supplemental material is brought together by the teacher, so it's their material. And so I was not, again, given the slides. I think our concern is the subject matter was completely appropriate. 11 to 13-year-olds aren't able to discern some of those events as factuals. There's a few other families that have spoken to their children and they say, we believed it because our teacher said it. And, it's that position of power. The subject matter was inappropriate. They have admitted that the teacher, there's a policy 2331 in the district, and it's also in It's covered in the Act of Freedom in their contract with OSD 11 and the Olympia Education Association. So basically the teachers union. They have admitted that she violated that policy, and that is an unannounced speaker coming into the classroom, a controversial, sensitive subject not being told and notified to parents to allow an opt-out, no opposing views to be given. And so these are points that we went in and challenged on, in the sense of, you're going to need to address this and correct this. And that was the investigation that we originally asked to happen. And they have admitted that she violated that policy.
Now, they've admitted she violated the policy. Have they expressed regret of the content of the lesson?
We feel that they've glossed over it. We had to push really hard. This has been about 3.5 weeks in the making. And we felt other families needed to know what went on in that classroom. And they kept saying, no, it's like a math problem. And we can just go in. If we teach something wrong in math, the teacher goes in and corrects the math information. And then, the students understand that and we move on. I said, this is different. You violated a controversial and sensitive issues policy, and families have a right to know.
I'm just going to say her name. Karina Chapman is the individual who gave this lesson, has a little bit of history with the school district.
She is known for controversial stances. And I think our issue with this is that she presented this to 7th and 8th graders as well. And the school did not do any kind of misinformation or let those families know. She did not have to come in and apologize to the students whatsoever. The principal, the assistant principal, came in, kind of glossed over what misinformation, and maybe we shouldn't use charged language, words like homophobia or white supremacist. And it was like, that was enough. She actually lied to the kids. And so she's known to take a political stance, which is why we don't take her as a teacher. But we're wanting to see the district actually follow through on their action steps in disciplining. And they're telling us that we can't have an outcome. But if we look at what their policies also say, it says a citizen's complaint can be made. And if you don't get resolution, you go to the next step. If you don't get resolution, you go to the next step. So our question to them is, how are you going to show us resolution if you won't talk about discipline or outcomes with this teacher?
Yep. Yeah, it's an issue for the media too. Whenever we do a story on a teacher that has crossed a line, we're not allowed to know. They won't speak about personnel issues. So we have no way of letting the public know, hey, has this been resolved? It's ridiculous. So there's a ton of issues with this. You mentioned the Parental Bill of Rights and the initiative that took effect on June the 6th. So this class sounds like it was right before that actually became law. But after it became law, that's when you've been trying to get your hands on this material, which you haven't been successful in. Do you feel like they're violating the law?
They told me they're going to violate the law. So I actually used on June 6th is when I requested to do a curriculum review, the day the law went into effect. And they didn't know what 2081 was. And not only that, they didn't know their own violation policy of 2331 of controversial and sensitive issues. They didn't know their policy from the district, and they didn't know what 2081 was. That's what allowed me to ask to see the curriculum. I went in then and reviewed all of science and all of history. Since they were claiming that you could cross over history to science, I wanted to see what approved curriculum there was for history. And I asked for all supplemental material as well. And the pushback was, well, we don't really give out supplemental, material. That's information and things that the teachers put together themselves. What I have found through this process is supplemental material does not go through core curriculum standards committee review. So what it allows is teachers like this to basically put things together and push that envelope in their agenda. She knew she put this together. She knew the group she was speaking to. She knew there wasn't going to be another teacher in the classroom. It had intent behind it, is our view on it, and that she was lying and manipulating and giving false and biased information and labels to young children. And so we used 2081. And again, they wouldn't give us the slides. I had to view them in person. I still don't have the slides. And they announced Autumn Laura from the district executive was in the meeting that day. I saw the slides 5 minutes before. And we were basically told on issues of social justice that they have been informed through OSPI and the board that they won't give out notifications and they won't follow opt-out guidelines.
They said that. They said that they will not, on social justice issues, follow the new law on Parental Bill of Rights.
Correct. Part of the issue with that is I asked them, I said, so if we request to see the material, so there is no developed curriculum for social justice standards. This is all supplemental material. So there is no core packaged material that you can review as a parent. And I said, so you're teaching curriculum in social justice and other areas that has never been reviewed by a curriculum standards committee. And she said, and I said, and that's okay. She's like, you'd have to ask OSPI, but that's, yes, it is supplemental and no supplemental material has to go through that kind of review.
Wow. And we will ask the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction about that and about this case, because when you think about that, that's wild. So you're saying that, oh, parents can see curriculum, like that's no big deal. But then you're also saying that teachers can, at will, at any time, without any oversight, essentially manufacture their own curriculum, call it supplemental material, and the parents can never see it. So what good is any sort of law mandating that parents can have access to curriculum if you're saying that supplemental curriculum can come out of nowhere and we can't see that? That is insane. And that's a much bigger issue than this one teacher going haywire. So what would you like to see here? What outcome would you like to see?
I think there needs to be an acknowledgement by the district that I think the 7th and 8th grade parents first should know, because they swept that under the rug, that those whole classes do not know. Secondly, we should announce that there was a violation of policy, have them held accountable for standards in both 2331, which is, and that also relates to the academic freedom, because in their own agreement with the district and their academic freedom for supplemental material, if they're going to present controversial materials, they have to run it by a principal or they have to show professional judgment. We have countered that she was unprofessional in her judgment, and that is misconduct by the RCW standards. And we are asking for misconduct in this case.
Wow. What would your advice be to parents? You know, here you've clearly taught your kids well to pay attention when something doesn't, trust their gut when something doesn't feel right. So in that regard, but also, your willingness to now come and speak out about these things. What would your message be to other parents who have similar concerns?
I think we have to really remember that when we think it's science, we have to do better, and we're going to have to follow through. More of us are going to have to look at curriculum. We're going to have to make them accountable. I'm looking for accountable answers of how this could have happened in a science classroom. And I'm hoping other parents, because this wasn't easy for us to come forward, I'm hoping we inspire some other parents to come forward and say, you're not the only one, and this has happened, and this has happened. And it helps make them accountable for the steps that they need to do with 2081 and in providing content to parents that we have a right and that we are the end-all be-all overseer of our children's education. And that's what the new law allows us to do, is to opt out. And they're saying they won't provide that safe space or an alternative learning experience. They're basically saying no.
It's wild stuff. Jake, we appreciate your time. We appreciate you being willing to speak out about it. And also, these sorts of things, I mean, we only know about a fraction of what happens, and the stories we've heard are already troubling enough. So we know that this is happening more often than we realize. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
What in the hell? I mean, honestly. So that is Jake McCullough. She has twins in a 6th grade class in the Olympia School District, supposed to be a science class. One of her kids recorded a teacher giving a presentation on what was supposed to be about a project to make a quilt out of different bugs and insect pictures and instead talks about how Ronald Reagan was a homophobe and let gay people die of AIDS because he hated them, talks about the Trayvon Martin case, tells a bunch of lies about it, says it was strictly a result of white supremacy. The teacher, again, Karina Champion, who's known for doing this in the Olympia School District. This is one of the most problematic school districts in the entire nation. I mean, when you look at some of the stories that have come out of it. So this is what we've done. We've reached out to not only the school district, but also we sent an email this morning to Karina Champion to ask her why she felt like this was appropriate content for a 6th grade science class. We have also reached out to the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction to inquire about this case, but also the broader issues here. We now have a new law on the books, and I know that people are trying to pick it apart in court, but we have a new law on the books that is the will of voters and the will of the legislature that passed the initiative, that is supposed to give parents a right to know about these things, to have an opportunity to opt their kids out of these things, to review curriculum, to review supplemental material. But this parent, Jake McCullough, has not today, as of this morning, been given the slides that were shown to her kids. They won't let her have the slides. Why do you think that is? Because they don't want her to send them to us. They don't want her to put them out publicly. They don't want the public to know what was taught to kids in a public school district. They let her sit and review them, but they wouldn't give them to her. Crazy stuff. So we're going to be putting out after the show today a full story with all of the information from this segment, so you can share it. I was shocked by the clip. So glad this 6th grader had the presence of mind to pull out her phone and start recording, or else you know what would have happened? The school district would have denied it. Oh no, she's exaggerating. That's not what was said. That's not what happened. It is what happened. It is what is said. It was caught on tape. They can't deny it. Now they need to answer for it. Let's hope they do. Coming up next, if you thought we were rid of the Socialist City Councilwoman Kshama Sawant, not so fast. She weighed in on the the election loss suffered by Congressman Jamaal Bowman, and as expected, her thoughts on it make no sense, but we'll talk about them anyway. First, if you're in the market to buy or sell a home, I highly recommend reaching out to our friend Wes Jones, a wonderful real estate agent in our area. He's been doing this for a really long time through all the market ups and downs. Bryce and Carla, who are fans of the Undivided podcast, reached out to Wes when they wanted to sell their home in Bellevue and retire to Florida.
I'm just very detail oriented and never put down our property, because you could hear I-90 from our property, and it wasn't the most feng shui, yummy piece of property, and our furniture never showed our house well, our own personal furniture. But he was like, oh yeah, he could see in his mind, this will show after the paint and the staging, this will be a premium property. He could see that, and he didn't let us feel like it was a subpar home the way it was.
Yeah, so they sold their home in 7 days for over list price, even back in January with the market the way it was. So Wes Jones, really good at this stuff. Also, they have wonderful marketing to make sure your home really shines when it hits the market. So if you're in the market to buy or sell a home, reach out to our friend Wes Jones of sellwithwes.com. Sellwithwes.com. You can start by using their home value calculator to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. One other thing I wanted to note about that lead story, I think we're okay saying this, is that we actually knew about this early last week. We taped the interview early last week, but we were waiting until they felt comfortable releasing the audio, because they're so concerned that the Olympia School District will seek retribution against this little girl for taping it. It seems like, they're more concerned, like, not the content, right? Like, our teacher went on this unhinged political rant in front of 11 and 12-year-olds, but like the families would not put it past the Olympia School District to try to punish this little girl for taping it so her parents knew what happened in school. So they were like, they had an attorney review it and all this stuff before they released it to us. And I'm glad they did, because it's hard to tell the story without actually just hearing it for yourself.
Right, and the school district did say your daughter shouldn't have recorded that. We could punish her for that. But we looked into that. Yeah, try it.
I mean, honestly, try it. If that's the route you really want to go, as opposed to just taking an L here and saying, yep, that's one of our teachers going unhinged again. Maybe we ought to do something about it. So just wanted to let you know kind of what was happening behind the scenes on that. All right. Double dose of unbelievable again today. Wow. How lucky are we? So former Seattle City Councilman Kshama Sawant, a socialist, has an opinion on why Congressman Jamaal Bowman, a member of the Squad, lost in his primary race in New York. And she says it's because he simply wasn't far left enough. Let's get to it. All right, so Congressman Jamaal Bowman of New York, who's the guy who pulled the fire alarm and then said, I wasn't trying to pull a fire alarm to delay a vote. Not at all. I was just trying to get out this door. And I thought that pulling the fire alarm would help me get out the door. Also severely anti-Semitic, has been denying Hamas atrocities, in a district where 10% of voters are Jewish. And he lost bigly, as Donald Trump would say, he lost bigly to a more moderate Democrat in the primary race to keep his congressional seat in New York this week. So Kshama Sawant, who was a city council member and then left her seat, was never voted out of her seat, which is always a shock to me, just decided not to run for re-election, but a member of the Socialist Party. She shared this on her Twitter account. Squad member Jamaal Bowman defeat is a cautionary tale for the left and certainly for socialists. And if it had stopped there, I'd be like, it is. Yeah. If you act crazy, you're not going to get reelected. But no, she went on. She says about what it's a cautionary tale about what can happen when leaders break their promises to the working class. Bowman voted to fund the Israel state's Iron Dome project. With the rest of the squad, he voted to block railroad workers' strike and refused to fight for the $15 an hour wage or Medicare for all. Working people are fed up with being sold out. We need a party of our own, rooted in fighting mass movements. It's interesting that she thinks he just wasn't far left enough. So voters, because he wasn't far left enough or socialist enough, they decided to elect a moderate Democrat instead. It's some interesting socialism math that she has going on there, but I'm totally fine with this. I would be more than happy if you had progressive members of Congress who are duped into believing that the only thing they have to do to be elected is to try to be even further to the left, because I really think that will end well for them. All right, let's get to unbelievable number 2. All right, we always expect that some of these protesters, especially the ones who are out at every single thing, are probably paid to do it. I don't know if we fully understand the extent to which they're paid to do it, but I now believe, I used to deny this, but I now believe more than ever that there is obviously money that's being pumped into these efforts. I mean, we've tried some, grassroots protests, which a few hundred people came to, but, even like we've got a social media audience of maybe like 400,000. And so when you look at, trying to get a few hundred people out to a protest and organize it and all of those things, it's still difficult. Yet for crazy causes, you'll have a few hundred people show up at the drop of a hat. And I'm like, something suspicious there. So anyway, this has been in the news a little bit this week, and I just wanted to talk about it because to me, it's just proof positive that these protesters are being paid. So on a site called DV Canvas, Acquisition and Retention, there is a posting. It says, demand a ceasefire in Gaza now, fundraise with Amnesty International. And it's a job posting. You can make up to $30 an hour standing up for human rights with Amnesty International. Now, sometimes Amnesty International has people who, you'll go down to a shopping area and they'll be standing around on a street corner with a clipboard and trying to get you to donate to whatever cause that they have that day. But this seems to be more than that. And also, one thing Nicole pointed out, we're talking about it this morning, is some of the vagaries about what they'll be involved in make this even more suspicious. So it says, talks about just the general thought of why this job exists. It says the unparalleled escalation of hostilities between Israel, Hamas, and other armed groups has taken a devastating toll on civilians. We are demanding that Congress and the Biden administration call for an immediate ceasefire to end civilian suffering. Apply today to fight back as part of our door-to-door canvassing team. You start immediately. It says Amnesty International is a renowned nonprofit fighting urgent human rights abuses worldwide. Compensation and benefits. Meaningful work that has an impact on a local, national, and global scale. Field organizers and canvassers receive paid training in competitive wages ranging from $20 to $30 an hour. You can get $100 to $200 weekly bonuses and $600 to $1,000 monthly bonuses. plus a $300 bonus for bringing a friend along to the cause. I'm kind of like, what's the bonus structure? Like if Hamas agrees to a ceasefire, like then they get a bonus. What's the standard there? Let's see, strong health insurance, blah blah blah. Over 25 paid days off a year.
25 days. That's pretty decent.
That's pretty good. Inclusive and social workspaces. Essential duties must be ready to walk up and down stairs and hills multiple times a day. Outdoors in all seasons and weather, either autonomously or with reasonable accommodations for the full shift. Must be available to work 1 to 8 p.m. between 3 and 5 days per week. So I can see how they might say, oh, this is just, they're just going door to door, paid canvassers. They're going to try to bring people onto the movement. You really think that's all they're doing? You really don't think that if there are protests happening, they're going to tap into these paid canvassers to show up and be part of protests on this particular issue in Seattle and beyond? My guess is there's a lot of overlap in those crowds between people who truly just showed up to be part of the movement and people who are paid to be there, whether they're walking around with a clipboard or not.
Who's
to
canvassing?
collect
Have you got somebody knocking on your door to tell you about Hamas
or
like, Gaza?
I'd be like, get off my property. Get off my lawn.
I have not seen this. So if somebody's come to your door, let me know.
Yeah, but also like you're paying people $30 an hour to go around and push the pro-Palestine, pro-Hamas narrative. Like that's an interesting form of protest, but that is what it is ultimately, right? It's a form of protest to go door to door on this particular issue and try to change hearts and minds on it. Hey, I'd rather have you going door to door than blocking a freeway. That's fine. If you want to knock on someone's door as opposed to standing in the middle of I-5 during rush hour for 5 hours, knock yourself out by all means. All right, we're going to get to some national news coming up next. First, I've encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge. Everyone needs insurance. You can't cut that out of your family's budget. What you can do is take steps to make sure you have the right insurance at the right price and that you're not paying for insurance you don't even need. So if you take the First Mark Challenge, it's totally free, by the way. You never pay First Mark anything for their services. They'll just go through your current insurance and then they'll go out, they'll shop their array of carriers and come back to you and let you know what their suggestions are. Maggie sent us an email. She said, after resigning from my job after a very unexpected situation at work, I decided to finally take the First Mark Challenge in April. I had also received my latest car insurance bill, which went up yet again, and I was looking to save as much money as possible. I've heard you advertise First Mark for months and months, but was skeptical, would this actually save me money? I am very happy to report I was connected with Levi at First Mark, and after he reviewed my car and home insurance, he recommended a new bundle that was half the cost and better coverage. I was very surprised and so thankful. This happens all the time. People take the First Mark Challenge, they wait, and then they're like, holy smokes, I could have been saving half, or our friend Ben saved $1,500 a year. So don't wait, take the First Mark Challenge today. There really is no downside. It's free to do the challenge. And again, you never pay First Mark Insurance anything for their services. So they're just going to take a look at things for you and see if they can do a little better. FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. All right, let's get to some national news. It's debate night in America. Get to that coming up in a second. But first, I just want to go south to Portland. It's fascinating to me that some of these cities, like let's say San Francisco and Portland, they almost seem like they're coming to Jesus sooner than us. And maybe that's because the depths of their crises there around homelessness and drugs got a little worse before ours did. So they've hit like rock bottom and then they're like, well, we can't deal with this. I just think it's fascinating that it takes rock bottom for them to do the exact things that those of us with a brain have been encouraging them to do for years and years. You know, that we get called NIMBYs and right wing and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden they see the light and they're like, yeah, maybe we should do those things, but we're going to pretend like it's our idea. Just insane. So Mayor Ted Wheeler down in Portland, who again, he's responsible for all this stuff. He's been as far left-wing as it goes, gave in to rioters and stuff in 2020, and then started to see the light. He came out and said, starting July 1st, so just a couple days from now, they are going to be enforcing in Portland a ban on camping. Here's a clip.
The enforcement starts on July 1st, and I think, Pat, you're the first to hear the specific date. What we've been doing since May 22nd until now is getting the word out. We've put leaflets out on the streets that people who are homeless have had the opportunity to see, so they know what the rules are. We've worked with service providers to make sure they understand what the rules are so they can talk to their clients and let them know what the rules are. And maybe most importantly, we've had the opportunity to train law enforcement. If you refuse to comply after you've been offered carrot after carrot after carrot, in comes the stick. And the stick is a fine or a jail term or both. The only way you can define fairness if you want to use the word fair, is you establish rules, you make clear what the rules are, and everybody plays by the same rules. That's what's fair.
That's also common sense. It's also what a lot of us have been saying for years and years and years. I always go back to this quote from Ann Davison, the Seattle city attorney, when she was running for office is, our laws are our values. And if we don't enforce our laws, then we don't have any values as a society. So him saying the only way you define fairness is you establish rules, you make clear what the rules are, and everybody plays by the same rules. That's how you live in a civil society. That's what needs to happen up and down the West Coast. And we need to really commit to that. And so I'm happy to see him come around to this. I just wish it had not taken Portland falling so far for them to do what people told them to do and what they wouldn't do for the sake of political expediency and because it wasn't popular at the time. A real leader is doing things that aren't popular, but to be right based on what's happening right in front of your face. And there's articles out this week about just how bad Seattle's downtown is, not just visually, there are some blocks that are pretty bad, but things that you don't notice, like the vacancies in office space. There are, we're on a crisis level right now where you see up and down the downtown core, which used to be this vibrant area, they're either boarded up or the city puts art installations in there to make you not feel like they're all vacant and abandoned. Like art is fine, but it doesn't bring a city back to life. And then they want to continue to blame the pandemic and all that absolute utter nonsense. No, at this point, it's just because the city has gone so far downhill. I do believe there's an increased political will to address some of the quality of life issues, the drugs and the homelessness. But it's like we went so far, it's going to take a long time. So I'm glad to see this from the mayor of Portland. That doesn't mean he gets a free pass. We welcome anyone into the common sense fold at any time for whatever reason that they want to join us. But you don't get to turn away and act like it wasn't your fault and that you didn't contribute to it in the process. So let's have a little humility as we join Team Common Sense, learning from mistakes, and then we can all take a deep breath and move forward from there. All right, CNN, the debate tonight. Oh, I'm going to have some champagne. I have some leftover champagne from our girls' weekend. It was funny. I was in line for coffee this morning and I was like, the coffee girls are so nice. And she was like, oh, what are you doing tonight? And I was like, oh, watching the debate. Are you? She's like, no. I was like, I don't know why. We get obsessed with this stuff. I love it. So I'm excited for the debate. I just want Donald Trump to be calm. I think if he can avoid, I don't want him to attack the CNN moderators, even though it's been pointed out that they've said crazy things about Donald Trump and called him, compared him to Hitler and all this stuff. He needs to be above the fray, as hard as it is for him, calm, focus on policy, and let Joe Biden melt.
Yep.
You know?
Did you see the poll out? I don't remember the exact numbers, but the majority of Democrats want Biden to be aggressive, and the majority of Republicans want Donald Trump to be polite
and calm. Yeah, it's because it's like opposite of their personalities, right? They want, Joe Biden is so just weak from his age and
or
such.
It matches their parties.
Well, yeah, but I also
Republicans are polite.
You want the best of your candidate to come out. And in doing that, you look at what are the worst Absolutely. Qualities of your candidate.
What people attack the most.
Yeah, and Biden is for like weak and, lethargic and all these things. So of course people are going to be like, we want him energized. And he will be drugged up. But no doubt in my mind.
I don't know how they say that because his energized, angry Biden thing is
creepy,
disturbing.
And also he gets into that.
And weird.
He whispers. Yeah. It's a whisper.
And then, that's what I want.
He'll get over to Dana Bash and he'll just right in her ear.
And then all of a
sudden
just
ear.
Scream.
Just scream. Anyway.
At the wrong point.
That's what we want. But CNN, I knew that CNN thought its viewers were stupid. I just didn't know they thought they were this stupid. So CNN did this really weird segment where they were talking about how the mics are going to work on stage. And which
it's funny to be in.
It's like how it's like the book, How Debates Work for Dummies. How mics work for dummies. But they are going to be muting. It's a more aggressive mute for the candidates who aren't speaking, which I have no problem with because, the last time Biden and Trump debated, it was a mess. It was a disaster. So I'm fine with them saying, hey, we're going to have a more aggressive mute situation. But the news segment they did on it was just downright weird. Here it is.
If we go behind the podiums, you can see two green lights. When they're on, they signal to the candidate his microphone is on. When the green lights are off, they signal to the candidate his microphone is off. Now I want to give you a sense of what it will look like for viewers at home if a candidate whose microphone is off interrupts a candidate whose microphone is on. So I'm standing at one podium, and I'll ask Phil to come in and take the other podium. And so let's say I'm answering a question. My light is green, and I'm speaking. Phil's microphone is off, and his green lights are not illuminated. He's going to interrupt me as I'm speaking, and this is what it will sound like. My volume remains constant, while Phil's interruption can be difficult to understand.
Let's try the opposite. My microphone is now on. Victor's microphone is off, and he's going to interrupt me. My volume remains constant, while Victor's interruption can be difficult to understand. Now, CNN's production team has shared this demonstration with the campaigns earlier today, and we're sharing it with you, our viewers, so everyone fully understands how tomorrow night will work. Now, we should note, by agreeing to participate in this debate, both campaigns and candidates have also agreed to abide by these rules.
I mean, if you're going to mute their mic, they have no choice but to abide by the rules, right? They can't do much about it. It's just so funny. It was so like, my mic is green, and when it's green, I can talk. And I'm like, okay, we get it. We didn't need the full-on explanation of it. So I support this, although I do hope that when there is a moment for proper exchange, they allow it. Sometimes, and I've participated in debates before, never a presidential debate always, ever, but the gubernatorial debates, for instance, I didn't like how structured they were. Sometimes it's good to see candidates sort of hash things out on stage. So I hope it's not too structured, but I understand the added guardrails. One other thing I just want to point out that's interesting to know about the debate tonight, there won't be a studio audience. So they're really controlling this situation. I honestly think it's because when Trump debates, he says funny stuff and the whole audience laughs, and they don't want that, but I digress. So they won't have the reactions from the crowd. The mics will be muted, so there's going to be a lot of control. But one thing that just came out from the White House Correspondents Association that worries me a little bit, so CNN is apparently being very strict about even allowing other journalists to be in the room. They're only going to allow one pool reporter, a print reporter from the White House Correspondents Association. So why is that a problem? Well, on TV in that demonstration you just saw, you'll note that if like Trump is trying to speak when his mic's off, that's not audible to us. So you need reporters in the room who can say what they were trying to articulate, or we'll never know. We'll never know the background stuff. We'll never know what happens during commercial breaks. So they're only allowing right now one pool reporter to capture all of it and tell us what happens. You've got the president and the former president in the same room together, and all we're going to see is what the CNN cameras are focused on and what their mics pick up, unless this one pool reporter sees it and reports it out. That's wild stuff. And so I'm actually happy the White House Correspondents Association, they put out a statement on Twitter and they're blasting CNN. And CNN is a member of the White House Correspondents Association. And, sorry, I'm getting a little far afield, but one of the reasons that this debates are always dramatic when it comes to who's hosting them is CNN's like, we've got the first presidential debate. So they want to own everything about it. And if they allow other media in the room, then suddenly they don't own everything about it. But they have to look at the spirit of the debate. It's about making sure Americans are informed on who they can vote for and can hear a fair and honest and transparent debate of the issues. So by controlling it too much, you're not living up to the spirit of what the debates are all about. So I hope there's still time for CNN to change course on that and allow more media in the room to report in real time on everything that's happening, not just what we see happening on our TV screens. Okay, really quick, just a note, kind of a sad note. So we're supposed to do Florida Report every Thursday. We're not doing Florida Report today. Miranda's taking the day off. Her pup died. Her dog, Henny, who's 14 years old, just the sweetest little boy. He had a medical issue, went in, took a little while for them to figure out what was wrong. He had a major surgery, made it through the surgery, but he didn't survive the night. And so she was told, was it yesterday morning? Yeah, yesterday morning that Henny had passed away. So she is not doing well, as you can imagine. She loved that little guy, and he was the sweetest little doggo. I remembered, if I could just share a little story quick, because everybody knows how horrible it is to lose a dog, and so Miranda's just beside herself. So I'm sure she'll read your kind words and all that. A memory of Henny that's very recent, when Miranda went to the hospital and almost died in the fall, she was away from home and from her dog for like 2 weeks, and he was just depressed. I was stopping by her house while we were there and visiting her in the hospital, and I swear he just thought she was gone and never coming back. And that was like his best friend, right? So I was there the day we brought Miranda home from the hospital, and we opened the front door and let her dog out, and Henny lost his mind. And he's just like, like, because he thought like his mom had died or something or was gone. And so he just jumps on her. And I know she was pretty weak at the time. She had like a walker and stuff. But it was, so I have a video of it, and it's just, I'm glad she has that memory, and sweet little boy. So Miranda won't be here today, but I'm sure she'll be back next week. And she's just, having a rough week. If you want to send her some nice notes, I'm sure she would appreciate that. Okay. We always talk to our friend Zach Abraham with Bulwark Capital about this time of the week. It's interesting how, it's not debatable. The economy was much better under Donald Trump. Whether you like the guy or not, how can you really debate that? And I know there was pandemic issues that overlapped both presidencies that they all like to point to, but the economy was stronger under Donald Trump, period. Gas prices were lower, all these other things were better. It's fascinating, though, to watch the media try to fearmonger about how Donald Trump, if he's elected, could be bad for the economy. And I'm just like, what? Like, you've let Joe Biden off the hook for actually being bad for the economy for a long time. And before Trump is even reelected, you're going to talk about how he could possibly be bad for the economy. And one of those things has to do with Donald Trump's promise to do mass deportation of undocumented immigrants, of illegal migrants. And so there were a couple news articles out this week about how, if he does that, if he makes good on that promise, the economy is just going to go down the drain. So I asked Zach Abraham about it. Zach Abraham, welcome back to Undivided.
Thanks for having me. Good to be back.
Yeah, let's see what the media is doing to spin Trump as being bad for the economy, shall we? Okay.
They don't do that.
Yeah, never. This might be the first time. Business Insider had an article. It's been parroted across a couple other publications. This headline: Trump's plans for mass deportation would be an economic disaster. So in it, they argue, they actually say, besides being cruel, it says deporting 11 million unauthorized immigrants would cause labor shortages and slash national wage and salary income, likely triggering a recession and reigniting inflation. So let's take that piece by piece. So feasibly, could it cause labor shortages if you sent 11 million undocumented workers out of the country?
Yeah, I mean, it could. It's not first of all, we're talking about that's an amount of people that equate to, what is that? 2.5%, 3% of the entire population. So, how many of those people are working age? How many of those people are able to work, right? That number keeps creeping down further. First of all, I would love to ask them what background they have, because they clearly know nothing about economics. If the jobs are that vital to the economy, as soon as those people leave, that impact or the cost of that labor will be immediately reflected in higher wages for everybody else. Now, would that spur inflation higher? Yes, but on the margin, right? Are we going to now all of a sudden pretend that the labor market is what's causing all the inflation? Running 7% deficits to GDP is what's causing the inflation. That's what caused it. So it is just trash. There is no economist that would stand behind that. And second of all, well, there might be some, like a Paul Krugman. I shouldn't say all. But second of all, the other frustrating thing is, so all policy, regardless of constitutional law, all policy that is immediately beneficial to the economy is good, and all policy that is immediately not beneficial to the economy is bad. If that's the case, you want to see a real boom to the economy, let's legalize the importation, the money management of cartel money.
Right. Yeah, it's immediately good, right?
And it would be. You'd see a boom. Let's do that. Let's legalize hardcore drugs to people that are 15 and older. I mean, it's internet. So your argument is a blip in inflation, or even a slight uptick in the unemployment rate, or a little hiccup for the economy is worth foregoing our national sovereignty? It's ludicrous.
It's a good point.
These people are out of their minds.
Yeah, it is a good point. I hadn't even thought about it like that. Like something that might be good for the economy in the short term doesn't necessarily make a good policy, and vice versa.
Hey, let's get rid of all taxes. You want to see the economy boom?
That sounds great to
literally,
me.
Yeah, if you came out and said, hey, we're going to suspend income tax for the next 5 years, the stock market would probably go up 30 to 50% in the following week.
Yeah.
So let's do that.
Well, and
there's a budgetary issue, right? You got to be able to finance.
It's ridiculous to consider. And you're right. It's not as easy as like, oh, good, bad. It's like, well, what about all the other negative implications of having 11 million undocumented immigrants and an open border? I also love how they say it would reignite inflation, as if inflation hasn't been, horrible under Biden, during his entire term. But you notice, like, and we've talked about this before, they'll bend over backward to make excuses for inflation under Biden, how it's like not his fault. But then it's like, then they'll do this whole doom and gloom piece when Trump's not even in office about how bad he'd be for inflation. It's like, what about inflation right now?
Well, and this is the part where I said that the thing that frustrates me about journalism the most is they're not even trying to get it right anymore, right? I mean, they are literally, they are arms of the political apparatus. That's all they are, and I just don't understand how you get up in the morning and call yourself a journalist and and take yourself seriously. I can't imagine living like that, where you're actively daily engaged in being a fraud, and you're a fraud.
Yeah, I mean, I used to defend the media a lot more. Not all the media is bad, but I mean, that article is insane to me. Zach, by the way, he's having one of their risk management webinars that's totally free if you're, getting close to retirement or worried about retirement. Today's, it's at 3:30 p.m. You can still sign up. KnowYourRiskRadio.com, KnowYourRiskRadio.com. It's specifically about inflation and the impact inflation can have and is having on your retirement savings. You want to make sure you can still have the retirement of your dreams, the retirement you've worked hard for, even with prices up and all of those things. So sign up. There's no obligation or anything like that. You can listen to it completely passively if you'd like. So KnowYourRiskRadio.com, KnowYourRiskRadio.com. Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Trek 24244. Go to KnowYourRiskRadio.com. Okay, let's get to our daily subscriber show poll. We are down to the wire. Down to the wire when it comes to collecting signatures for Initiative 2066, which would stop state lawmakers, Democrats, from banning natural gas use in your home or your business. This is an immense undertaking. Let's Go Washington, they did 6 initiatives last year, and they had all year to collect signatures, more than 400,000 for each one. They got enough signatures on all of them, and that was impressive in and of itself. But this time they've had, a month and a half to collect 400,000 signatures to try to make sure they reach the July 5th deadline to get Initiative 2066 on the November ballot. If they can do this, there's no initiative they can't run. And I think Democrats know that. There is no initiative and no period of time too short for them to get successfully more than 400,000 initiatives to force an issue to the ballot. Democrats, I'm sure, are terrified over that because this is our last check, right? This is our last check on the party in power, is the right to initiative and referendum, which, what did I say about it? That's why Democrats, if they get a supermajority, they'll come for that right because that'll be the only check on their power and they'll seek to get rid of it. Mark my word. So anyway, I wanted to gauge how many of you have signed this initiative in this short period of time. So I asked you guys on Patreon, Locals, and X in our daily subscriber show if you've signed Initiative 2066, and if not, why? And I know you guys are plugged in. I'm shocked at how many people have. On X, 100% of people who took the poll said they've taken it or they've signed it. On Patreon, 87%. On Locals, 88%. Wow. Remember, we did a poll like this with the other 6 initiatives. Those numbers were not that high. So that shows how effective this has been and also how unpopular the idea of banning natural gas is. So for those of you who said you haven't signed it, I will say you have some pretty good reasons. TWM 1301 on Locals says both of us are medically impaired and don't get out that much, but I would sign any initiative that I can support. One of the good things Let's Go Washington did this time around is they sent envelopes with a copy of the initiative to homes of people who signed the other initiatives. So you could do it at your kitchen table, send it back in. Let's see. Robin says, I have not been anywhere that it's available. I would, though. You don't have to wait to just come across it. in these next couple days, you've still got time to find a location to sign it. Go to letsgowa.com, and you can find the locations that are still collecting signatures. Let me see here. JQ says, yes, I signed it, and I'm mailing in additional sheets of 15 names I picked up at a Bellevue meet and greet. I love it. Thank you guys who've also volunteered to collect signatures. Crafty Grandma Crispy says she sent I had a sheet sent to me and have 43 signatures I need to turn in this weekend.
Nice
I'll
work.
drive to wherever I have to turn them in. I don't trust the Postal Service since it took them 4 months to deliver a Christmas card to Lake Tapps from Covington. Yeah. And that's the thing. At this point, I would say if you don't get them in the mail today, if they're not postmarked by today, you need to find a place to turn them in person. You can also find that at letsgowa.com because we don't want to take any chances, right? Similar with ballots and all the issues that come into that when you send it via USPS. So in a nutshell, find a place to sign in person if you have not already, because this is going to be down to the wire. I mean, I have faith they'll have enough signatures, but we know it's going to be close. So find a place to sign. If you have sheets, even if there's just one signature on it, either they need to be in the mail today or you need to go to letsgowa.com and find a place to turn them in, because all of these have to be properly counted, organized, and turned into the Secretary of State's office by July 5th. So clock is absolutely ticking. So go to letsgowa.com. But I'm so proud of you guys. Man, 88% roughly combined.
That's really cool.
Pretty dang good. This gives me a lot of optimism. Okay, questions and comments from the stream and from our subscription platforms today. Carlene Heath says of this teacher story, what does HIV have to do with bugs? Good question, Carlene. The teacher should have asked herself that before she turned a lesson about insects into a hate-fueled rant against Ronald Reagan being a homophobe. Just
so bizarre.
Leave Ronald Reagan out of it, okay? Daniel's Circus Adventures. Holy crap, I thought student phones in class were bad. I'm no longer of that opinion. That's a good point, because I get it. There's some middle school just banned cell phones, but like,
oh, it's coming. They're kind of slowly trickling in, all these schools that are banning phones, and it is, I mean, I think it's good for kids, but it is maybe scary for this.
You're taking away their opportunity to be able to, now there's no oversight. Because if we had done this story just on the sixth graders' like recollection of what happened and all of that, I don't think we'd have a story, because it's hard to craft a story like that if there's not actual evidence. And to have an audio recording of it, that says everything it needs to say. Greg Olakis, indoctrination should lead to termination and incarceration. Maybe not incarceration unless you're like doing something weird, but I don't even think I said this. The school district, well, I think Jake said it in her interview. The school district said the teacher's been disciplined, won't say what that discipline is, and they have now said that teacher will be back teaching next year. So it's clearly not termination. But it bothers me to the core. We talk about this all the time, that they'll say we can't talk about personnel issues. You're a public school district. Your teachers are paid with our money. What do you mean you can't talk about? It's because the teachers union, right? But like, you've disciplined her, but what does that mean?
She had to stay in at lunch.
Yeah, you have to stay in at lunch.
No recess.
But it's the Olympia School District. This stuff happens all the time. They clearly encourage it. You also noted, you reached out to OSPI yesterday. Usually, and I'll give this to Chris Rakedahl and his staff, they're very quick at getting back to us. They always get back to us. And they haven't yet, which is highly unusual for them. So we'll see what they say. Mama...
By the way, so we didn't show it, but after this interview, she went to another meeting with them, and they gave her this sheet that was the initiative, the new law, and it was highlighted and all the places that they could skirt the rules of the initiative. So it's very interesting.
They're and that's the thing about 2081. There's these court challenges against it, and then there's OSPI. I mean, the superintendent of public instruction already put down directives saying basically we're not going to follow this when it comes to gender and identity, which was a primary issue, is teachers helping kids hide their gender identity from their parents. And then you had the school district, and again, I'm going to put out a very thorough written report on this with all that information in it, but basically saying bluntly, we're not going to follow it because we think we can get around it here, here, and here, which is
such as insane. One of the issues was if you don't allow questions, then you don't have to get that approved, because that's supplemental, and the teacher is just doing that on the fly.
Yeah, just doing it on the fly.
They don't have to get it approved as long as they don't allow questions from the students. Well, well, how's that teaching if you don't allow questions? Right?
It's very strange stuff. They obviously do not want parents to be fully informed. It's they're hostile toward parents. Let me see here. Michael Downs, teachers unions could use some guidance in how to teach, not propagandize like the commies. Yeah. Ginny Carlson, makes sense. The push an OSD to remove phones from classrooms. Just said this. As an OSD parent, who knows the district will not keep my kids safe. I want my kids to be able to text me immediately if they feel unsafe or if there is a lesson plan like this so I can pick them up. And before anyone says it, no, I cannot afford to homeschool. You make another good point there about the cell phone thing and the safety issue. You know, if there is, God forbid, a school shooting, I mean, how many times have cell phones been used like to try to help people understand what's going on in a classroom? So that's kind of an angle that I hadn't even thought of. Or texting your parents like, hey, something's going on, come and get me. So I'm not sure I'm the cell phone thing.
Enforce things like kids need to still pay attention.
Right.
And if you're caught not paying attention and playing on your phone, then, you know, maybe there's some sort of punishment or something for that. But I do think that I don't know, it's a shaky subject to take them away. And,
and Jake McCullough, the mom of the 6th grader who recorded this conversation, got in our chat and said, thank you all. That is probably the scariest public speaking experience I've ever encountered. This has been difficult. Your words of support mean a lot. And thank you, Jake, for speaking out. We know it's hard. We know it's difficult, but we encourage parents all the time because this stuff happens more than we know, happens more than we find out about. And every parent who's willing to speak up helps us push back against what's happening in schools. On Kshama Sawant, the former socialist city councilwoman, saying Jamaal Bowman lost his congressional seat because he wasn't far enough to the left. Mandy says, well, pulling the fire alarm did help him get out the door, sort of. He lost the primary, so that's kind of being booted out the door. That's funny. On CNN, doing a segment letting us all know how microphones work, Weiscastle says, will there be any set delay on the broadcast so CNN could drop anything without us knowing? That's another interesting thing that came out this morning. Usually, I would say it varies, but do you know what your delay was, Nicole, in radio?
The 8 second?
8 seconds, yeah. Usually it's like 7 or 8 seconds. Someone was saying CNN's doing a 1 to 2 minute delay. I mean, there was somebody on Twitter saying it'll allow them to edit things out. Not really. I mean, you can't re-edit on the fly. All you could do is dump. But that's still, you'll know that they skipped something. You can't like stop something, edit it, and play it back in the course of 1 to 2 minutes. I'm just telling you from behind the scenes, that's just not possible.
But if the shot changes, though, that's an easy way to not realize they dumped something.
Yeah, 100%. So that's really interesting. 1 to 2 minutes is way too much. It seems like because past debates have been a disaster, right? I think back to the Chris Wallace debate? Oh my gosh, where it was unhinged and nobody learned anything. We were all dumber having watched it. So they're trying to structure it more. I don't necessarily hate that idea, having moderated debates, but you can't structure it so much that it's just not genuine or not honest. And so that's the concern, especially because so many people on the right are already skeptical of CNN's ability to be fair. When you add all these things, it just fuels that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it just fuels that.
I mean, it will happen regardless. We'll all have different theories, but we'll see.
We will see.
It's weird that it's CNN to begin with. I'm surprised Trump didn't make it something a little more in between, although there really isn't anything. So I don't know what could have made it better.
I mean, I think that he was willing to agree to anything because he's very confident in his abilities. Okay, Nicole, thank you. Thank you for your thoughtful input, everyone. And with that, let's get to our closing sanity check. So by now, I am sure that you have heard about the rape and murder of Jocelyn Nungary, a young girl who was killed allegedly by two illegal immigrants. This has been a national story. It's been all over the place. So a reporter for Fox tried to confront a Democratic lawmaker who's been opposed to, loosening or tightening security at the border, Representative Summer Lee. Here is the response she gave to this reporter asking her about the rape and murder of a 12-year-old girl.
I'll ask you quickly about the 12-year-old girl in Houston that was tortured.
The strangers. I don't even know who you are, and I don't know who she is. I live in Pittsburgh.
Okay, but there was a child who was killed at the...
I don't know anything about it.
You don't know about the child that was killed by illegal immigrants?
And that is why Democrats are going to have a hard time winning in November. That has been your sanity check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here for our final live show of the week. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. We're going to be talking about 2A rights on Sundays with subscribers this week. We'll have William Kirk on the show, an expert in gun law, and we're going to be talking about some of the things happening in Washington state, but also what might happen under solidified Democratic supermajority. So if you've not become a subscriber already, help support the show and also get access to that Sunday show and daily polls by signing up. undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com, just $5 a month. While you're there, you can also shop our merch store. You get 25% off with the promo code SANITY24. That's SANITY24. All right, subscribers, we'll see you on Sunday. The rest of you, we will see you back here on the live show Monday at noon. Farewell. Enjoy the debate tonight. Don't do it sober.